All right, let's get right into it. What if everything we think we know about information is really just scratching the surface? Today, we're going to dig into a powerful idea from cybernetics that completely flips our understanding of what information actually is and how it works.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to challenge the idea that information is a thing. Then we'll unpack a really cool definition that breaks it all down. After that, we'll see how this plays out in the real world, especially in our crazy news-saturated lives. And finally, we'll talk about the surprisingly big ethical questions this whole idea brings up.
Okay, so first things first, we have to tackle this huge assumption we all make. We talk about information like it's a package, right? Something you can send or get or store. But the cybernetic perspective says, hang on, what if it's something else entirely?
Yeah, so on the one hand, you've got the common view. Information is a commodity, you transmit it, you store it, simple. But the cybernetic view, it's totally different. It sees information as a relationship, something that's enacted and emerges. It's not something you get, it's a consequence of an interaction.
And this brings us to the absolute heart of the matter, this brilliant quote from the cyberneticist Gregory Bateson. Now, at first glance, it seems so simple, right? Information is the difference that makes a difference. But it is incredibly profound because it's hiding two very distinct, very important parts, two differences that we almost always miss.
So let's really pull that definition apart. To get what Bateson is saying, we absolutely have to hold these two differences separate and look at each one on its own.
You see, it's really a two-step process. Step one, a difference out there in the world has to be noticed by somebody or something. And step two, that difference, once it's noticed, has to actually matter. It has to have a consequence for the observer. You need both for information to happen.
So that first difference is all about perception. A change in the world, a signal, a piece of data. None of that is information on its own. It only starts to become information when an observer, with their own unique history and perspective, can actually distinguish it from everything else. Basically, what you can notice depends entirely on what you're equipped to see.
But here's the kicker. Just noticing something isn't enough. That's where the second difference comes in. It's all about impact. That distinction you noticed only becomes true information if it actually changes you, if it alters your potential for action, or what cybernetics calls your viability. It has to have real-world consequences. And making a difference can mean a lot of things. It could be as simple as signaling a threat, watch out. Or it could be something that supports stability. It might invite a small adjustment, an adaptation, or it could be so big that it forces the entire system to completely reorganize just to survive. This all leads to a really interesting question, doesn't it? How does a random event, just a simple disturbance in the environment, get transformed into something meaningful? What's the bridge that connects those two differences we've been talking about?
Well, the secret ingredient here is a process called transduction. It sounds complicated, but the idea is pretty straightforward. An external event, let's call it a perturbation, hits a system. The system then takes that disturbance and translates it, or transduces it, into a change in its own internal state. The meaning is literally created in that act of translation. Get this. This means information isn't out there waiting for us to find it. The world is just full of, stuff happening, disturbances. Information is what arises inside of us, inside the system as a response. We don't extract meaning from the world, we make it. Think about a pharmacist trying to read a doctor's terrible handwriting on a prescription. They're not just decoding squiggly letters. They are actively participating in creating meaning. They use their knowledge of the doctor, the patient, the medicines, all of it, to enact the message. They're part of the system. So now let's apply this. What's really fascinating is how this cybernetic view perfectly explains a very modern, very frustrating problem: our relationship with the 24/7 news cycle and social media. It brings us to this massive paradox. We are swimming in signals, constantly bombarded with disturbances from the news. So why then do we so often feel more confused, more overwhelmed, and less informed than ever? The answer lies in this fantastic and crucial concept called slack. Slack is simply the breathing room. It's the space, the time, the capacity a system needs to actually take in a disturbance, process it, and let it become meaningful information. Without any slack, the whole meaning-making process just grinds to a halt. If you think about it, news in the past had a rhythm. You had the morning paper, the evening broadcast. There were built-in pauses for digestion. Today's 24/7, always-on cycle has completely erased that relaxation time, that essential slack our brains need to make sense of things.
And if you were to chart it out, our modern problem looks just like this. The sheer number of disturbances, the perturbations, coming at us is off the charts high. But our capacity to meaningfully respond, to actually turn any of that into real information, is pretty limited. The system is just totally saturated.
So what happens when a system gets saturated like this? Well, here's the paradox. The result isn't more information. The result is that our systems go into a protective mode. We withdraw. We become indifferent. It's not because we're bad people. It's a natural systemic response to being completely and utterly overwhelmed.
And this reframes the whole problem, doesn't it? This isn't just about needing better email filters or taking a social media break. It brings us to our final and maybe most important point. This is fundamentally an ethical issue.
Let this sink in for a second. The crucial takeaway is this. Our current information environment, by systematically destroying Slack, isn't making us smarter or more engaged citizens. It is actively eroding our ability to create meaning. It's destroying our capacity for differences to actually make a difference.
So we're left with a really profound challenge. This isn't a technical problem about managing data. It's an ethical problem about how we design our world. And the question we all have to start asking is this: how do we consciously begin to design systems for ourselves, for our communities, for society that have more slack? How do we build a world that gives meaning, the time and the space it desperately needs to emerge?